I knew the summer was going to be different the second I saw his name pop up on my phone. Eli. Back Friday. That was 3 days earlier than planned. The message was short, but it dropped into my stomach like a stone. I stared at the screen, a little too long, thumb hovering, rereading the words as if they'd rearrange themselves into something more manageable. They didn't. He was coming back early. And I wasn't ready. The farmhouse had been too quiet without him. If I was being honest, too still. I'd been crashing here for the last month, taking a break from the noise of the city, staying out at the place we used to call Gramps' Kingdom when we were kids. It was part nostalgia, part escape, part something I didn't have the words for yet. But now Eli was returning, and the calm I thought I'd built was already unraveling at the seams. We hadn't seen each other in nearly a year. He'd gone west after college, some startup internship in Oregon that turned into a job, a life, a distance I didn't know how to close. We texted, sure, called when we remembered to, but being in the same space again, that was going to stir up everything I'd spent months trying to bury. He was my best friend growing up, my brother's best friend first, technically, but we were closer in age. Somewhere between building tree forts and sneaking beers behind the barn, something changed. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it had always been there. Quiet, heavy, waiting for someone to name it. I walked through the creaky hallway of the old house, the floorboards groaning like they remembered us too. The scent of dust, old wood, and the faintest trace of motor oil lingered. Eli's cologne always carried something like that, clean but earthy. I hadn't smelled it in months, and I didn't know why the thought of it made my chest tighten. I paused in the guest room, the one he always claimed. The corner of the window frame was still chipped from when he shoved it open too hard one summer. I'd meant to repaint it, but never did. Funny how something broken can become familiar. Something you leave alone because it feels like a part of the story. There were 2 lawn chairs set out by the fire pit already. I'd placed them last week, almost by accident. Or maybe in hope. Now, with him coming back early, the questions I'd been avoiding felt a little louder. What if nothing had changed? Worse, what if everything had? And what the hell was I going to do when I saw him again? Because the truth I didn't say out loud, not even to myself, was simple. I missed him too much. When Eli finally pulled into the gravel driveway, the sound of his old Tacoma crunching over loose stones made me jolt like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. I wiped my palms on my jeans and tried to play it cool, stepping out. Onto the porch just as he cut the engine and swung the door open. "Miss me?" He grinned, the sunlight catching the strands of honey blonde in his messy hair. I raised an eyebrow. "Miss the smell of your truck's exhaust. Every damn day." Eli laughed. Loud, warm, the same laugh he'd had since we were 13, and convinced duct-taping bottle rockets to a skateboard was genius engineering. He grabbed his backpack and walked up, eyes squinting in the light, scanning the porch like it hadn't changed in a decade. It hadn't. Neither had the way my heart kicked a little harder every time he looked at me. "You already moved into my room, huh?" he said, nodding toward the screen door. "Guest room," I corrected, ignoring the flutter in my chest. "Yours is still a shrine to high school Eli. Posters, cleats, that hideous lava lamp. I didn't have the heart to touch it. Lava lamp's vintage now, probably worth something. Yeah, like a migraine. We fell into step like no time had passed. That was always the thing with us. Even after long stretches apart, the rhythm of our friendship came back easily. Inside jokes flowed like muscle memory, sarcasm layered over affection. We moved around each other effortlessly, like we'd been orbiting the same center for years without realizing it. Later that afternoon, after unpacking and catching up over beers on the porch, we decided to camp out back by the creek. Something we hadn't done since high school, but it felt right, like slipping into a familiar scene in a half-remembered dream. It wasn't until we were unrolling the sleeping bags that I realized I'd only brought one. Seriously? Eli raised an eyebrow, grinning. You had one job. I packed two, I muttered, rifling through the duffel again, heat creeping into my cheeks. I swear I did. Sure you did, he teased, kicking a rock lightly in my direction. Guess we'll have to share like the old days. Old days? I scoffed, trying to play off the twist in my stomach. Pretty sure the last time we shared a sleeping bag, you kicked me in the ribs half the night. I was dreaming I was in a wrestling match with a bear. Did the bear win? Obviously. You're here, aren't you? We laughed, but the air felt thicker now, like something had shifted, even if neither of us acknowledged it out loud. That night, the stars hung low and clear above us, the fire crackling softly nearby. The single sleeping bag lay stretched across the old foam pad, just wide enough for two if they didn't mind being close. Eli crawled in first, tossing a folded sweatshirt behind his head. I followed, careful to keep a sliver of space between us, though the shared body heat was already warming the bag. So what have you been running from, really? He asked after a long silence, his voice low and serious for once. My breath caught. I didn't answer right away. I could feel the side of his arm brushing mine, barely there, but impossible to ignore. Not running, I said finally. Just needed to breathe. Funny. Thought you always breathed best around noise and people. Not all the noise. He turned his head slightly, and in the flicker of the dying firelight, I caught the way his gaze lingered on me a moment too long. I pretended not to notice, heart thudding in my ears. We lay there quietly for a while, shoulder to shoulder, the night pressing in around us. Every inch between us felt heavy with things unsaid, memories we didn't talk about, glances we'd both looked away from too quickly. There was comfort in the silence, but tension too, like we were on the edge of something we couldn't name yet. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't want the night to end. The thunder rolled in just after midnight. At first it was distant, more like a low growl than a real threat. I opened one eye and stared up at the tent ceiling, or what passed for one. We'd tied a canvas tarp between trees to keep the dew off, but it wouldn't hold up in a storm. Eli stirred beside me, muttering something about stupid squirrels tap dancing on branches, then went still again. I wanted to let it go. Wanted to close my eyes and pretend the growing chill in the air and that metallic scent, rain on iron, and leaves, weren't real. But the flash of lightning that lit the sky a second later made pretending impossible. I reached over and nudged his arm. Hey, rain's coming. He cracked one eye open. You sure it's not just a dramatic dream sequence? A drop hit my forehead. All right, fair point, he groaned, sitting up and rubbing his face. What's the plan? Back porch. Fast. Unless you feel like cuddling with hypothermia. Eli grinned sleepily. Would it cuddle back? I rolled my eyes, but my chest ached at the way he could make me laugh even when soaked in dread. We scrambled up, stuffing sleeping bags and gear into our arms, and took off in a sprint through the dark. The sky cracked open as we ran, and by the time we reached the covered porch, we were both drenched, hair plastered down, shirts clinging to skin, jeans heavy with water. I dropped the bundle of damp bedding and leaned against the railing, catching my breath. Eli followed a second later, water dripping from his jawline, his shirt nearly translucent. He pushed his hair back and looked at me, laughter in his eyes, chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. Guess that's what we get for trusting your tarp skills, he said. Don't blame me. Nature has a grudge. A sudden gust of wind sent a shiver through me, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around myself. Eli noticed. Come on, he said, nodding toward the side door. Let's get inside before we both turn into human sponges. We padded into the house, water trailing behind us on the old wood floors. I headed toward the bathroom to grab towels, but froze when Eli's voice stopped me. Dude, your teeth are literally chattering. You need to get out of those clothes. My heart stuttered. I knew he meant it casually. He always had that easy way about him, like nothing rattled him. But something about standing there, both of us wet, breathless, and too aware of the closeness of everything, made the air feel thick. "Yeah," I said, voice rough. "Good idea." I tossed him a towel, then turned away as I peeled off my soaked shirt. I heard the soft rustle of fabric behind me, a faint hitch in his breath. I didn't look. Couldn't. I kept my gaze fixed on the fireplace. "Want me to light it?" "Please," he said. His voice was lower now. I knelt down, hands fumbling with the matches. Every move felt deliberate, slower than it needed to be. Behind me I could sense him, warm skin, clean scent mixed with the sharpness of rain, the faint shift of weight on the floorboards as he stepped closer. The fire flared to life, casting a soft glow over the room. I sat back on my heels, suddenly, too aware of everything. My bare skin, the heat creeping into my chest, the silence behind me that stretched a little too long. Then Eli sat beside me. Close. Closer than necessary. "You all right?" he asked softly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I could feel the warmth of his leg against mine. His shoulder brushed mine every time he shifted, and each time he didn't pull away. He held the towel loosely around his neck, shirtless now too, and when he glanced over at me, his expression was unreadable. You ever feel like, I don't know, like something's been right in front of you, and you didn't realize it until it's too loud to ignore? I turned to look at him. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Yeah," I said. "I do." The fire popped, sending a spark into the air. Neither of us looked away. There was a pause, just a second. But in that space, everything shifted. Eli's hand brushed mine, a light, tentative touch like he wasn't sure if it was allowed. I didn't move. He didn't either. My thoughts tangled. Years of jokes, camping trips, birthdays, and quiet nights like this one. But none of them explained the weight of this moment, or why I didn't want it to end. He leaned back against the wall and looked up at the ceiling. "Remember that time we got stuck in that elevator at the state fair? You were freaking out about missing the fireworks, and I was just trying not to panic because you were so close I could barely breathe." I blinked. "You never said that. Didn't think I could." His voice was barely a whisper now. He didn't need to say more. The tension had stretched to its breaking point, but neither of us wanted to tear it. Not yet. We sat in the quiet. Glow of the fire, breaths in sync, the rain still tapping softly against the windows like a metronome for everything unspoken. I didn't know what this meant. Not fully. But I knew I didn't want to move away. And I knew, without question, that neither did he. The fire had burned down to low, glowing embers, casting the room in a soft orange hush. Eli had dozed off beside me, one arm slung loosely over his stomach, chest rising and falling in that peaceful rhythm only sleep could bring. I stayed still, afraid even to shift the blanket draped around both our shoulders in case it broke whatever spell we were under. But my mind refused to rest. The room was quiet, but inside me, everything churned. I watched his face, his lashes flickering with dreams, a soft crease between his brows like even in sleep he was trying to figure something out. I wondered what he was dreaming about. If it had anything to do with me. I turned my head to stare at the glowing coals in the fireplace, biting the inside of my cheek. I should have said something earlier, when we were laughing in the rain, or when we were shoulder to shoulder in the sleeping bag, or when his hand brushed mine and neither of us moved. But I didn't, because if I said it out loud, I'd never be able to take it back. And what if I was wrong? What if this thing, this electricity that kept pulling me toward him, was one-sided? What if I mistook comfort for connection, warmth for want? I thought about all the years I'd known him. The times we were practically inseparable, Every summer, every birthday, every long night sharing stories under a blanket of stars. The way his eyes softened when he teased me. The way I started noticing the shape of his smile more than the punchlines he told. The way I'd catch myself remembering the press of his knee against mine days after it happened. I wasn't just afraid of rejection. I was afraid of losing him completely. Hey. His voice was soft, groggy and low, but it sent a jolt through me like cold water. I turned. Sorry, didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. He rubbed his face with one hand, eyes half-lidded. You looked like you were thinking too. Hard. Thought maybe I should keep you company in the spiral. I tried to laugh, but it caught in my throat. I turned back to the fire. I'm just tired. Not that kind of tired, he said gently. I know the difference. He reached out, fingers brushing mine again. This time he didn't pull away, and this time I didn't pretend not to notice. You remember, he continued, his voice quiet, when we were 17 and we snuck out to the lake in the middle of the night. We laid on the dock and talked about everything we thought. We'd be by now? Yeah, I said. My throat felt too tight. You said you wanted to travel, get out of here. I said I'd just be happy staying close to someone who knew me. And I told you you'd marry someone who didn't need you to explain yourself, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips. He glanced at me then, eyes darker now in the low light. What if I already found that person? My breath stopped. For a second I couldn't process what I'd heard. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words. I swallowed. Eli. I mean it, he said quickly, sitting up straighter, our knees brushing now. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I didn't know if I should say anything, because you matter too much, and I didn't want to screw it up. I turned toward him slowly, heart thudding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. You didn't screw anything up. He exhaled, shaky. God, this is harder than I thought. I don't know how to say it without sounding like an idiot. Try me. He gave a short laugh, then looked me dead in the eyes. Okay. I think I've loved you for a while now. Not in some dramatic movie kind of way, but in that way where everything reminds me of you. When I hear a song, when I'm walking through town, when I smell freaking pine trees, I think of you. And I didn't even realize how bad it was until I got here and saw you again and felt like I could finally breathe for the first time in months. I stared at him, unable to speak. The weight of his words wrapped around me like a second skin. I'm not saying you have to say it back, he added quickly, nervously. I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest with you, because pretending I didn't feel it was getting harder than just saying it out loud. He looked down then, hands twisted in the towel still around his shoulders, like maybe he regretted saying anything at all. I reached out slowly, unsure, until my fingers touched his. He looked up. His eyes searched mine, hope and fear and something deeply vulnerable written across every line of his face. I let out a shaky breath. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to ruin what we had. I didn't want you to look at me differently. You mean like I'm looking at you right now? I nodded. Then yeah, he whispered. I am. There was a pause. Long enough for the fire to crackle again. Long enough for me to shift closer and for him not to move away. I touched his cheek, soft, warm from the firelight, and watched his eyes flutter slightly at the contact. You weren't the only one. Falling, I said. I just didn't know if I was allowed. He leaned in slowly, giving me all the time in the world to pull back. I didn't. When our lips met, it wasn't rushed, it wasn't desperate. It was careful and quiet and full of all the things we hadn't said until now. His hand found the back of my neck, fingers curling gently. I breathed him in. Salt, cedar, rain. My heart beat in time with his, chest to chest. When we pulled away, neither of us said anything at first. There was too much peace in the silence to break it. He rested his forehead against mine. So, now what? I smiled. We figure it out. One day at a time. He nodded, still close. I can live with that. We sat there, arms tangled, warmth radiating from the dying fire and from each other. Everything that had been so heavy now felt lighter, like we'd been holding our breath for years and finally let it out. Outside, the storm had passed. Inside, something new had begun. The world felt impossibly still after that first kiss, like time had stretched open just for us, like nothing outside this little cabin existed. I don't know how long we sat there on that couch, tangled up in each other, saying nothing, hearts thudding like two kids caught doing something they weren't supposed to. Except this time, there was no shame, just relief, and a quiet, almost giddy kind of joy that bloomed in my chest like sunlight pushing through after days of gray. Eli's hand rested lightly on my thigh, thumb tracing idle circles. He'd stopped asking if he could touch me. He didn't need to. My body leaned toward him now, instinctively, like it had always known this is where it wanted to be. So, he said softly, lips brushing close to my temple. Does this mean I finally get to call dibs on you? Or is there a waiting list I gotta fight through? I laughed, an actual full laugh that surprised even me. Oh yeah, huge wait list, sorry. Your number's like 7, maybe 8. I'll have to check. He made a wounded sound. Unbelievable, after all these years, and here I thought letting you steal my fries was a clear sign of commitment. Oh, so now we're keeping score? Damn right we are. I looked up at him. His eyes were still soft around the edges, that teasing grin not quite hiding the emotion just beneath. I let my fingers trail down his arm, watching goosebumps rise in their wake. It feels weird, doesn't it? I said quietly. He tilted his head. What does? Saying it out loud, letting it be real. I keep expecting something to snap. Like maybe we wake up, and this was all some dream that ends with one of us saying, "Just kidding." He didn't laugh. Instead, he laced our fingers together. Well, if it is a dream, he said, I don't want to wake up. But I get what you mean. Feels like stepping off a ledge and hoping the ground rises up to meet you. I nodded. It's not that I'm scared of you. It's what this means. What it changes. It doesn't have to change anything we don't want it to, he said. But yeah, it will change some things. Probably all of them. And I think I'm okay with that. We were quiet for a beat, just breathing the same space. I watched the fire crackle lower, the embers casting long shadows against the log walls. This place had always felt like a safe haven, but now it felt sacred, like we'd left a version of ourselves behind and stepped into something entirely new. What about when we get back? I asked. When we're not curled up in a cabin, in the woods with no one watching? He gave a small, thoughtful sigh. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, but I don't want to pretend when we get back. Not with you. I looked at him. So no hiding? He leaned forward, kissed me gently again. So soft it felt like a promise. No hiding, he said. The warmth that filled me then was different from anything I'd felt before. It wasn't just relief or desire. It was belonging. The kind you only get when someone sees every part of you and chooses to stay anyway. I like this version of us, I said. He smirked. The cuddly, emotionally vulnerable, kissy one? Yeah, that one. Well, he said, shifting so I was tucked more fully against his side. Get used to it. I plan on being obnoxiously affectionate for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable? Future, huh? Longer, if I'm lucky. We stayed like that for a long time. Wrapped in a blanket that smelled like rain and wood smoke, limbs tangled, laughter echoing low between soft kisses and unspoken things that didn't need saying. For once there was nothing I wanted to run from. For once, I was exactly where I wanted to be. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, but everything outside the cabin still wore its weight. Pine needles heavy with droplets, the moss dark and rich, the lake's surface a sheet of misty silver in the morning light. I stood at the window, cradling a mug of coffee, watching steam rise and disappear like breath into the cold. Behind me, Eli rustled under the quilt. He was still shirtless, blanket pooled around his waist, curls sticking up at odd angles. He blinked blearily and gave a soft, croaky, "Mornin'." "Hey," I said, unable to stop the grin that crept across my face. "Sleep okay?" He yawned and stretched, his hand searching the empty space where I'd been curled up next to him all night. "Yeah, but you weren't there when I reached for you. Rude." I laughed, walked back over and set the mug down on the bedside table. "I figured you'd want coffee first." "You know me too well." I slid into bed beside him again, and he wasted no time pulling me back into his arms. We lay like that for a moment, our legs tangled, our breaths sinking. There was nothing urgent about the morning, no alarms, no schedules, just us and the soft light filtering in. "Do you think your brother's home by now?" Eli asked, voice muffled against my shoulder. I winced. "Probably, which means I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do when he realizes I ditched early. He's not going to freak out, is he?" "No, I mean, maybe at first. But he likes you. He just doesn't know he likes you like that for me yet." Eli smirked. "Well, lucky for him, I'm incredibly charming under pressure." We both laughed, and I felt some of the tightness in my chest ease. The future, what came after this cabin, after this perfect little pocket of time, was still a little foggy, but it didn't scare me anymore, because now I knew Eli was in it with me. "I was thinking," I said, brushing a hand through his messy curls. "Maybe we don't rush back just yet. We could take the scenic route, stop at that old gas station you like, the one with the weird milkshakes." He looked up at me, brow raised. "You mean the one that puts peanut butter in? The strawberry flavor? Yeah, it's disgusting. But for some reason you love it." He grinned. "It's called complexity. You wouldn't understand." "Oh, I understand. I just have taste." He grabbed a pillow and lightly bopped me with it. "Insult my shakes. Again, and I'll make you ride in the bed of the truck. Worth it." He smiled wide then, the kind of smile that tugged at something deep in my chest. And in that moment, I reached for his hand, just gently, without fanfare, and laced our fingers together. He stilled just a second, and then squeezed back, like it was nothing, like it was everything. We lay there, hands clasped, the quiet wrapping around us. It wasn't some grand gesture, no dramatic declaration, just fingers fitting together naturally, like they'd always been meant to. "I don't want this to be a moment we look back on and wish we'd done something with," I said softly. "I want to build something with you. For real." Eli looked at me for a long time, then leaned in and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. "I do too," he said. "Let's start with milkshakes and go from there." A laugh bubbled out of me, soft and sincere. Outside, the clouds began to part, a weak sun stretching across the wet earth. The world hadn't changed much while we were inside, but we had. And that made everything feel different, brighter, possible. We packed up slowly, letting the silence between us speak where words weren't needed. When we stepped out of the cabin and onto the muddy path, Eli reached for my hand again, casual and sure, and I let him. I wanted him to. We didn't look back as the cabin disappeared behind the trees, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't stuck in the past. I was walking into the future, with him.